Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on crime realities versus perceptions. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. Everywhere we go, it seems, people want to talk about the crime and quality of life issues that we're seeing here in New York City. But are the perceptions about rising crime the real story? Gang-related broad daylight shootings like these that terrorized residents in Brownsville, Brooklyn, stunned not only the public, but also veteran law enforcement officers, especially in one incident where a 3-year-old girl was wounded.
These gangs would shoot at their oppositions in vicinity of high schools, daycare centers, MTA buses, and densely and highly populated areas. No regard for anybody in the area.
These guns were seized during the arrests of 32 alleged gang members during a 2-year investigation by Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez and the NYPD. By mid-November 2022, police took more than 6,100 guns off city streets. Shooting incidents were down by 15% compared to 2021. The decline attributed to precision policing and a partnership with Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez.
These defendants collectively are responsible for shootings and other acts of violence and either participated directly in the shooting or directly assisted in these crimes.
Despite the drop in shootings, crime overall was up 28% over last year. The NYPD says the increase is due to a 30% rise in robberies, a 27% increase in burglaries, and a 33% spike in auto thefts. The terrifying scooter mugging of a 12-year-old girl who was dragged during a chain snatching was a painful reminder that children are victims too.
On the street, there is a general atmosphere of fear and disorder, and that leads to people being afraid to be on the train, and it's quality of life down the line.
Random, unprovoked attacks on the subway like this one, where a man was shoved onto the tracks for no reason, are deeply disturbing. Luckily, he survived. Incidents of disturbed individuals using hammers, hatchets, and knives have increased safety worries. In response, the NYPD now deploys more officers into the subway system, and they are making arrests. But City Council member Robert Holden says his constituents are still wary.
People are afraid to take the subways. If we're afraid to go on to the New York City subways, New York City will never come back.
The Guns for Grants organization works with partners like the Brooklyn DA and St. Francis College to encourage teens and young adults to turn in guns in exchange for a free college education and support.
We are incentivizing behavior no different than here, shoot a drill music video, go viral, you might get a record deal. You know, our program is turning an illegal firearm to us and you go to college for free. So we've incentivized a pathway where individuals can now immediately say, wait, if I do this, this is going to create an opportunity.
There are many ways this can all go. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me is Ralph Salento. He's a former NYPD Lieutenant Commander of Detectives and a professor of police science at John Jay College. Ralph, thanks so much for being with us.
Hello, Lisa.
Hi, we appreciate it. Also with us is Rashid Littlejohn. He's the founder of the Guns for Grants organization. They have people turn in guns and in exchange get a chance to get a college education along with support to help them make that happen. Rashid, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me again.
We really appreciate it. Also with us is New York City Council member Robert Holden from Queens. He's a member of the Public Safety Committee and outspoken about crime that's been going on. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Lisa.
We really appreciate it. Ralph, I want to start with you on this. We've been told that things are getting better. From what you see and from your police background, what do you think is happening?
Well, I mean, any reduction in crime is a positive thing. So the numbers don't lie. But the perception on the street is that people don't feel safe, particularly with this rise in subway crime. There's no putting a happy face on that. Subway crime is out of control. It's eventually going to lead to changes in executive leadership in the police department, I would think. But there's a general fear of concern for disorder and lawlessness, specifically in the subway. So it's the perception of what's out there. Crimes seem to be getting more violent, and the police are trying hard, but they're limited by certain things that they can do.
Rashid, from your viewpoint, because you're out in the communities, you're out on the streets, police department recently did a major takedown. with gangs in Brownsville and 10 public housing developments there. What do you see happening? Are things getting better, or are they still the same problems?
I mean, I think things are getting better. I think some of those record-breaking shooting numbers that we saw over COVID was due to what was happening at the time, the influx of cash. I think similar to 2019, where we were talking about how shootings have been down the most in the last decade, then we've seen these things come back. I think it's starting to get back to less crime happening in the community. And a lot of these situations that happen on the train are isolated. I ride the train very often. I take the kids on the train when we do trips. We go to St. Francis. We're in Brooklyn. We on the train. And there's never a moment where I feel like we are unsafe. I think the train has always kind of been, you have to be alert because nobody's, dictating who can ride the trains. Mental illness is an issue. Rising numbers of homelessness is an issue. So what we just try to do is make sure that we keep one another safe when we're riding on the trains. And as it pertains to like the gang violence with the big takedowns and a lot of the young guys that are caught up, a lot of that stuff is also isolated. It's specific groups who stick to specific areas, and these are the issues that occur. I think that these things live in a bubble, but once you add media to it, and we just had a big governor race, and there was this whole conversation on one of the governors who spoke more about the crime that was happening to kind of conflate that New York City isn't as safe. I don't really feel that way.
All right. Well, New York City Council member Robert Holden, you sit on the Public Safety Committee. You hear a lot of the reports and see a lot of the information that comes out. What is your take on where we're at right now? What are you hearing from your people?
Well, my constituents, crime is number one, the number one concern for them. And I think anybody that's been on the subways sees it. I see it every time I ride the subway. Some person that seems unstable, you don't know what they're going to do. They're ticking time bombs. And if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can have a problem on the subways or on the streets of New York. By the way, if anybody walks the streets of any borough, you will see mayhem in the form of just go into any drugstore or any store, and you'll see everything is kind of locked up, especially the Walgreens or the CVS's, or you'll see everything behind glass now. You can't buy anything unless you call an attendant to open it up. We all see that. And those crimes are not being reported. Most of the stores have given up even reporting it. So any drop in crime that we're told is happening is not really true.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I would say most New Yorkers wouldn't jump a turnstile or go through an open gate. I think it's again, it needs to be enforced. We need to have rules, the same rules for everyone. That means you're going to jump a turnstile, you should expect to be stopped by whether it's an officer or security or someone.
I mean, but even when we had officers all throughout the train stations, that when people hopped over the turnstile or walked through the gate and here's your ticket for however many hundreds of bucks, it didn't prevent it from happening because people would not show up to court most of the times, or, unless we were catching somebody with a warrant, which most people in the city don't have a warrant. I think that the conversation is addressing the culture, the poverty, the people that just want to get away from paying a fare. And if you put people at Times Square, as Lisa just said, okay, 15 people walk through the door. Are the police going to lock up 15 people at one time frame? So I think that there's a multitude of things happening that we can't just piece by piece.
No, the MTA has its own. Robert, do you want to speak to that? Because the MTA put out video, just surveillance video,
and it was anybody.
There were so many people.
But again, this is people taking advantage, but because they know it's not being enforced. If you don't enforce certain rules and regulations, it's going to happen. It's going to get out of control. And this is what I'm talking about. Let's start enforcing these, let's start enforcing turnstile jumping and make it, a crime. It is a crime. It's taking advantage and it's hurting the whole system.
Well, there's a couple things going on.
One final point on that, and then we'll take a break.
Robert is 100% right? So I understand what Rashid's saying, that it's a cultural thing, but that doesn't make it right. You're stealing entry to the system. And I'm sorry, Rashid, just on your numbers, that's not correct. When fare beating is enforced, there are precipitous drops in beating the system. Are people going to squeak through? They're always going to squeak through. But when fare beating is aggressively enforced, fare beating goes way down. There are way more drops in fare beating, and that increases monetary intake from the MTA. That goes to improvement on the tracks. It's not a matter of whether you can get away with it. Ethically, it's wrong, right? You're supposed to pay to access the system. And so a lot of where this subway crime is coming is from people that are fare beating. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that fare beats commits a crime, but I'm saying that everybody that commits a crime has fare beat.
Let me ask you all this. Robert, is anyone afraid of getting arrested anymore?
No, and initially, I just spoke to a lot of precinct commanders. Nobody's going to jail for committing property crimes. You know, I have COs of the precinct saying, you know, we keep rearresting the same individuals stealing cars or catalytic converters or you name it from automobiles, and they're out the next day or even same day. Everybody knows that's happening. And again, so you have to stop this behavior, or again, people are going to move out. But everyone sees it in their neighborhoods. We've had this kind of crime, catalytic converters, are so many being stolen, and it costs the motorist, the person, over $1,000 to replace it. But yet it's
Robert,
and nobody's getting caught.
I have to agree with you, Robert, but I hate to use an old adage, but elections have consequences. It all comes back to the DAs. It all comes back to the Braggs of the world, and the DAs are saying we're not going to prosecute property crimes. I mean, what are the police commanders to do? They are keep rearresting the same people over and over again. It all comes back to the DAs. The DAs are not prosecuting, and this is like an epidemic across the country. You just can't say wholesale, I'm not prosecuting property crimes, which is what's going on.
But as part of its bail reform, and that judges can't consider the dangerousness of an individual. The only state in the union that doesn't have that. So that the people that are dangerous are getting out, and they're doing it again. So this is a vicious cycle. So either we're going to get control of this or not. And that's what I think.
At that point, we got to really address, okay, how many Khalif Browders are in Rikers Island right now? Like, I work with Rikers Island with a bunch of young people who are going into our Guns for Grants diversion program, who've been sitting in there for 18 months, still haven't seen a judge, who's sitting in there waiting for a trial to come, and who knows the situations they're going through. People are just at Rikers. Are there bodies that's dropping dead, people who are dying? So at what point are we going to say, okay, crime is not right, let's go out there and fight it, but let's also make sure that we create opportunities and we support the people in the communities who are not the majority of the people in the neighborhood that
I agree with that. It's all part of one toxic cocktail that has to be balanced the right way. Right. I mean, if you're asking me, do I think the communities are fine, Rashid? No, absolutely not. So, I mean, there's no other way to say that except for I agree with you 100%. But that's not an excuse for breaking the law.
Let me ask all of you, give each of you a chance to respond to this. So, Ralph, is it really getting worse, or is it really getting better?
I think given the roadblocks we have up with enforcing the law, I think it's getting worse, and I think it's going to continue to get worse. Bail reform is killing us. They're letting people right back out. And the prosecutors who just flatly refuse to prosecute crimes, that has to be dealt with. But it has to be dealt with through elections. Demonizing the police doesn't help. Defunding the police doesn't help. The lack of respect for the police doesn't help. So we need to reverse all that. There has to be community buy-in, and we have to start doing the little things to stop basic quality of life crime. When you have quality of life crime, it creates the perception that if I can get away with little things, I'll get away with big things. I think you need to have a stopping point right at the subway system and deal with fare beaters once and for all, and that will stop miscreants from getting into the system. And we have to at least try. We can't keep going to where we're going. Nothing is getting done, and violent crime is getting worse.
I agree with the detective. We need to really get rid of the cashless bail system. Let's talk about Charles Barry, the poster child for bail reform, bragging that he couldn't be stopped by the police. He was arrested for the 140th time, and he said he's going to continue to commit crimes because they keep letting him out. So this is only one example, but it's really kind of systemic in New York State. By the way, crime dropped for 27 straight years up until bail reform was instituted and passed in Albany in 2019, in the fall of 2019. And is it a coincidence, Detective, that we've had crime go up every year since 2000?
No,
Let me
it's not a coincidence.
No.
Rashid, what do you what is your take about this? Do you think
I think that there's 8 million plus people in New York City, and if we conflate these random incidences as this is just a trend that is happening in our communities, it's being disingenuous. I think that when we really scope in, we can see most of these situations have their own specific issues, and it doesn't speak for the community at large. And at large, we're still dealing with the impacts of COVID in communities that need a lot of resources in our communities. Now, when it comes to bail reform, I think about people who are still stuck in Rikers right now for longer than what their crime has, even been for. So how are we going to deal with the individuals in a system that is still broken when there's people who need support, who should be on their way home now for something petty, but they're still sitting there? And when it comes to the train station and having more police at these terminals, lock up everybody. You make sure that they're at Times Square, make sure they're at Columbus Circle, make sure they're at Yankee Stadium. Don't just put them in the ghetto into the neighborhoods to lock up more Black and brown people when it's about fare evasion. That's a New York cultural thing, where I'm a New York kid. People hop the turnstile everywhere and sometimes in front of officers.
Yeah, once in a while, I'd like to hear somebody talk about the victims, Rashid. And there's more victims. You're worrying about a small percentage of people that are in Rikers. And I do worry, but I was on criminal justice, and we did visit, and it's a mess over there. We understand that. And we need to put more resources. We haven't built new jails or renovated that location. And that costs us, obviously, in quality of life in those jails. But what about the victims? I'm at so many council hearings on public safety or in council hearings. Nobody talks about the victims of crime, like I mentioned before. So let's start. You should think about the victims.
We work with the victims.
Think about the victims in your neighborhood.
I work in a community where we work with victims. Our goal is to stop and reduce crimes in our community, to support victims of shootings. But to say every kid in the neighborhood has a gun, no, we need to make sure that we stop.
Well, hold on.
We try to make sure that we stop more victims from happening because there's already a victim there. So
hold on, Rashid.
Stop more victims.
Robert never said that everyone in the neighborhood has a gun.
Hold on a second. Go ahead.
Robert never said that everyone in the neighborhood has got a gun.
And
we shouldn't refer to victims as crimes as isolated incidents. I mean, if you remove all of the stats that Robert said and just go with the one stat, that is incontrovertible. More than 90% of the homicide victims in the city are Black and Hispanic. So you can't just disregard that. It's not logical. That is a true statement.
So we should focus on more policing, stopping these guns from coming into the community, more policing, stopping these guns and these contraband from coming into the community. You're talking to somebody that understands from historic reality, the police, the 75th precinct. You want to watch that documentary? We could really get into the role that these systems have played with over-policing our communities and taking advantage of everyday people who are not participating in crime at all.
Actually, the same communities that were over-policed and that where there was a pullback are now saying we want more officers. These individuals arrested in the gang takedown in Brownsville, but they were terrorizing people according to the authorities.
And that was the same.
10 different nights of developments, which are mostly
right. The churches was with the community during the 94 crime bill when it was lock up all these drug dealers because these guys in our community, but there was no one else that got the brunt of that. It was just the people who was on the ground selling drugs. So we've seen these trends of when issues happen. You saying that, they want to lock up these guys because of the gang violence, but we talk about the music industry, the fact that there's a lot of artists getting record deals, but nobody's stopping these record labels. So we're not going to say the community's just speaking to stop one area, one aspect of the crimes.
No. I want to be clear. I don't want this to get mischaracterized. I'm simply saying that they had 32 individuals, what they called trigger pullers, video evidence of them actually shooting on the streets. Almost all of the shootings, in more than 24 in broad daylight. A 3-year-old girl was one of the people who was wounded. These are residents of they're shooting in their own community. So it's in terms of safety, in terms of the victims, and a lot of that, the households are headed by women. So it's like, what are you going to do?
I believe that those individuals should meet their, they should have to face law. Like I am all for law and order when it pertains to individuals who are committing crimes.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers